system, relax in our seats and close our eyes. Maybe rock back and forth to get comfortable. And then take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling and exhaling, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we're listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Okay, I have to go close the door. Okay, well, welcome Karen, welcome Marjorie and Joanne. Today we will be moving into a new topic, or at least new for this week, which is truth. And to get started on our conversation, we are going to actually look at the Mussar assumptions, which isn't something that we have done in a little while. So as a reminder, I created these assumptions to kind of help people get started with their practice if they weren't familiar with Jewish teachings. Like an assumption in a business context, these things may or may not be true, but they can help you kind of move forward and make decisions. And so the four assumptions are that we all have a divine spark, but it's occluded by our baggage. We all have free will, but it's not always accessible. We're driven by the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And we all share the same soul traits, but have a unique measure of each. So the one which I think is relevant to truth, or the one that I would like to, they're all relevant to some degree, but the one I want to talk about is this inner conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And I'm going to stop the share. So as a reminder, when we talk about the evil inclination, it's not like this sort of murderous evil that would come up, but it would be more, it's more like our selfishness, our fears, our anger, what Freud would call the id. And then the good inclination, it's like our prefrontal cortex, it's our compassion, it's our empathy, it's our ability to mirror other people. And so I want to kind of pause and kind of get some reaction to kind of this idea of this sort of inner conflict. Yeah, Carrie.
Didn't see what you were talking about on the screen. It was last week's slide.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're all confused here.
All right. I had a couple different slides open. So let me close these other slideshows. Yeah, someone was privately messaging me about that, but I was hoping that I was so articulate that you would just follow anyway, but clearly that was not the case. Okay, so how about we go for a take two? Can you see the four assumptions slide? Okay. So this one here, we're driven by the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. I will copy that and then stop the share and put this in the chat. There are Hebrew words for these, Yetzer Hatov and Yetzer Hara. In some ways, it's easier using the Hebrew because it doesn't kind of come with all of our baggage about good and evil. Sometimes people call it the hostile impulse. So yeah, does anyone have any thoughts about this? Yeah, Joanne.
Yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes when someone does something that you disapprove of in some way, or that you find insulting, I mean, there's a real wish to like get revenge or get back at them or do unto them what they did to you, kind of thing. And so I guess that's what I think it means. Instead of being kind and sympathetic to their plight, like this one woman that I know I know her in person and I know her on Zoom from another group. And she was going, and she's got a lot of immunodeficiencies and she's getting sick all the time. But I don't, I feel like sometimes she takes it on herself or she's looking for sympathy. It's hard to know. So one time, one of the other women in the group this was reading to Healing said she's having trouble getting through it. So this woman, the difficult one, offered to read some of her to Healing. And she got a response back. It was like, well, sometimes you want to be the receiver of everybody's attention, and sometimes you want to be the leader, like out of nowhere and like really unnecessary. So a lot of people came to this woman's defense, not online, but personally spoke to her and said, just ignore that. And at least one person called the person who had done the writing and said, are you okay? Didn't accuse her of anything, just how are you doing? Because maybe something was going on in her life. I know she's had trouble recovering from knee surgery. So you just don't know, where some of these things come from.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. And I think you gave a number of really good examples there. It's like, okay, someone says something really kind of harsh and out of line and it's okay, well, what is my proper response? I could, flame them by email and say, you're a terrible person. This person, was just trying to help you. Or you can say, and that might be the evil inclination, I'm hurt, I'm going to strike back. versus, oh, I'm going to have a little compassion. That's maybe there's something going on with this person. No, it's not to say that people aren't accountable for their actions, or that we should always just, this is not a, turn the other cheek message or just kind of take it, but it's understanding those two impulses and then deciding in kind of a mindful way which direction to go. See, we have Karen is up next.
So if I understand this correctly, it says we're driven by the conflict between evil and good. And so for the first time, I realized that if everybody had followed a good inclination and life was good and easy, would we really be driven to improve the world? And how would we know to do that? And if everyone had evil inclinations, we might lose our drive at some point to want to go further and feel that life is hopeless. But when we're given free choice, the drive between good and evil allows us to choose a direction, and gives us the opportunity to make a difference. So I think having both of them is what contributes to our drive to better the world. Without that, there would be no reason for free choice. There'd be no reason to make decisions and no reason to work for change.
Absolutely, Karen. And there's actually there's a story in the Talmud how the rabbis like trapped the evil inclination. And they said, oh, it's great.
No,
It's conquered evil. And then nobody went to work, and the chickens stopped laying eggs, and nobody fixed their roof. And so that's kind of why the Yetzer Hara is a better name than evil inclination, because there's nothing, sexuality, there's nothing wrong with that unless that drives every decision you make in the world. There's nothing wrong with getting angry unless anger drives everything you do. There's important self-preservation that comes from the evil inclination. So yeah, I think having both of these is really, really critical. Thank you. Let's see, it's Paul or Carrie.
So I think that I had an experience this last weekend, which was really interesting. It was uncomfortable, let's say. It was more than interesting, it was very uncomfortable. But in retrospect, it was interesting given the context of what we're talking about. And that is that I was not in a great mood. I mean, there were many things that were going fine. It was just fine. But there was definitely something else moving inside me. And it meant that I was working a lot to not misinterpret what people were saying around me or doing around me. That the first interpretation would be something very defensive. And it wasn't the whole time, but there would be these waves where that would happen, and I had to make a choice of, no, I don't really think that's what that person meant. So it was really it was not evil, but it was definitely not the best way to interpret what was going on around me. And it was not real. It was not real at all, but it was so anyway, that was a choice that I had to make. And maybe to Karen's point, I wouldn't have felt like that was a great thing to have to go through, but it gives me certainly empathy for folks like when Joanne was talking about people that are having a hard time, that there are times when people are going through a hard time and they don't know how to handle it. They're feeling persecuted for whatever reason, and everything looks like persecution. Doesn't matter what you do. So
yeah, thank you, Paul. I mean, I think they've done neuro studies that like the hindbrain is scanning for threats 5 times a second. And when you're just kind of, and for whatever reason, you got triggered in some way where you were taking the threats really seriously. more seriously than we're wanted. Hindbrain doesn't know that that person's not trying to kill you or whatever. But you had enough presence of mind to say, I don't think I want to act on this. And that's guiding the evil inclination with the good inclination. I'm just going to give people the benefit of the doubt and suck it up and just kind of get through this without like making a scene. So it's great self-awareness. We have Wendy and then Bonnie and then Bonnie.
When I think of the good and evil inclination, I think of them dwelling together, and then this conflict comes when I see something like I have something that happens, or I have a thought to do something, and then I don't hear voices like weird way, but I think of these as like voices telling me, oh, this is going to be a good thing. But that could be the evil inclination saying that. And then the good also talking, yes, you need to go ahead and do this. So I think that it's within that time frame that I'm choosing what to do, that I am more apt to hear from the evil inclination and have to actually have the strength and the wherewithal to know what it is and what I should do. That's kind of the way I see it. It's like a little cartoon, I suppose, but that's just the way I see it, kind of back and forth with you.
Yeah, and Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, the 20th century Mussar master, he defines the choice point as only those times when it can go in either direction. Like if you're just going to go down the good path or just down the not so good path, there's actually not a choice point. But that's like when it's could go either way, that's kind of where the free will becomes really important. And sometimes we'll make the right choice, sometimes we won't. That's all part of the human condition.
Then having to discern which of those voices is the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the evil inclination, I read about this at the end of the book, it tells you what a great job you're doing. It's like, wow, you have finally figured it all out. You've finally become enlightened. You've got it all figured out, just to kind of lull you into complacency. And that's where we can really get into trouble if we start thinking we have all the answers. And it might be because we have been working really hard at discerning, and then we get a couple of, okay, that interaction went well. And that's where we can become a little bit vulnerable. So, Bonnie, what are your thoughts?
So, having come from a professional experience for most of my life in the Jewish community to a volunteer experience now, I'm seeing both of them occur in volunteer experiences where it's a planning committee. And it's really new to me to be spending this much time as the volunteer and not the professional running that program. And for me, what I need to really do is listen and shut up and really let the other volunteers figure this out. But it's somebody has to be right. And sometimes nobody is right. Sometimes you're just going to make the best decision that you can, having the information you have. So I hadn't thought of it in those terms until we started this discussion. I'm curious to know if other people have had those experiences.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, I mean, the reason why these are sort of assumptions at the front of the book is they're intended to be thought provokers and widely applicable in many circumstances. So I think it's awesome that you're able to think about a current circumstance you're in with kind of maybe a slightly different lens. So is it Carrie this time? All right.
I was thinking how this plays out in, for instance, divorces, which I've been a had a couple, and it was really, really hard for both parties to maintain the good inclination. And the evil inclination, it's really ugly. I mean, it can be really, really ugly. And in my case, it all worked out eventually, but it took 10 years or 5 years, something like that. But I remember how horrible the things we said were, and back and forth, and trying to maintain kindness was really difficult, really difficult. So that's what came to my mind when this first, that's one of the things that came to my mind, was how difficult it was at that time for me to try to do the right thing and not succumb to the evil inclinations.
Mm.
And,
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard.
yeah, it was very hard.
Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're not our best. I think Taylor Swift, has a song that my daughter's a big Swiftie, and the lyrics are something to the equivalent of, sometimes I'm just not that person. All right, well, let us, with this, thank you all so much for kind of getting going and overcoming our incorrect slide sharing. So we're going to kind of start talking about the truth. And we're going to begin with the spectrum of truth. And this one gets really, can get kind of complicated. So we'll see where it takes us. So the mantra is to be distant from falsehood. And then maybe someone can unmute and say, what happens if we have too little truth, if we're unbalanced to the side of too little truth?
If we have too little truth, then we have misinformation.
Mhm.
And misinformation breeds chaos.
Mm. Yeah, so we can.
I'm trying not to be political here, but it's true in all different kinds of situations that without truth, you can't make good decisions, and you can't be helpful in a society.
Yeah, and to personalize what you're saying, it's if I am not being truthful, then I am the one who's undermining sort of those societal relationships and interactions. Yeah, thank you. Now, how about the flip side? What if we have too much truth, Bonnie?
I think there are many times where saying something would hurt the other person and not be helpful at all. And it's, in my mind, the time to shut your mouth.
Mm.
You don't have to tell somebody how that dress or those slacks or whatever looks on them. It isn't necessary. We're not in third grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can be very hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah, on one high holiday sermon, Rabbi Sarah Weissman at my shul, she was talking about this, and she's like, there can be only one right answer to, do these pants make me look fat?
Right.
Because, and this was a hard one for me, because I was very much the truth to a fault kind of guy, the just put it out there. And it was really stunning for me to learn that there could be too much being too truthful. Now, what about falsehood? The mantra is be distant from falsehood. So how does that kind of play into what we've been talking about? Yeah, Marjorie, I think.
Okay, I hope you can, I'm on my phone and this is like a whole new experience. So, for me, there is a midah, another midah called shtika, which means silence.
Mhm.
And at that point, I mean, I'm always going to hear things. There's always going to be information from, somebody said this about, typically it's about, human relations. I just have learned not to say anything. But back to the, I can't find your, you took the screen off, right? With that had the
Yes.
continuum. Okay, so on the far side of not enough truth, was that the statement?
Yeah, it was not, so you could have too
Too
little
much?
truth or too much, yeah.
And for me, it's like, how do I know though? Like, where do I go to seek the truth? And do I have to do I just end up interpreting what is true for me? And I guess like that truth would feel, how does it feel? Does it feel right? Does it not feel right? Like, how do I know? That's what I start questioning is, how do I know the truth? But yeah, like staying away from falsehood is just, don't do anything about it. You just take that information, let it sit, kind of like meditate and watch it go, and then and when the real truth comes forward, then that's when you can respond to it. That's just.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's thank you, Marjorie. And maybe to help clarify a little bit, I just want to remind everyone that we're talking about our own truth balance, which isn't exactly the same as I'm watching the TV and somebody's going to fact check what kind of information is being given. And even like fact checking is also can be very objective, because you can, like, some things about whether something's true, but some things are just patently not true. It's dark outside. It's not dark outside. It's light outside right now. So that's a falsehood. But, is it bright outside? Is it partly cloudy? Is it a nice day? I don't know, it's 82 degrees. For some people, that might be miserable. A lot of people would say that that's, would be really nice living in Minnesota at the moment. So again, why would the mantra focus on the falsehood piece, to be distant from falsehood, as opposed to cling to the truth? Yeah, Paul.
Well, so maybe to the example you were saying, for instance, that maybe it's easier to see a falsehood than it is to see what truth might be in a situation. Might be something where, well, I know this is not true. I don't know what exactly is true, but there are things that I know for sure are not.
Mhm.
And like you said, is it bright outside? Yeah, but is it too bright? Is it sunny, as you say, overcast but bright? There are other kinds of ways of looking at it, I suppose. But I'm rambling a bit, so maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But it just feels like if there's certain things that are not true, you stay away from them. Maybe you don't know what they are true, to Marjorie's point. Maybe it emerges that there is a direction that feels true to me, and then I can go that way. But I know in the moment, I don't want to go that direction.
Mhm.
Going back to my experience of, and this happens occasionally anyway, that where somebody says something and it feels like they've just slighted me. And I think, okay, I know that's not true. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what they were really talking about. I don't know what they intended, but I know that it's not true that they were, that there's something terrible that they were trying to do to me. So I'm going to stay away from that. I'll see what comes out. All right. I'll
Yeah,
stop.
thank you. Thank you, Paul. So that's a really interesting answer to kind of Marjorie's conundrum, because we are faced, especially today, with what is true. People are so different about what's true and what isn't true. But especially when it comes to their internal voice, is that really true that this person's trying to hurt me? I don't know if I want to give any energy to that. I'm just gonna stay away from that. So Wendy.
I like the way the mantra is put in the use of the word falsehood, because it gives me a visual impression of cloak. Don't put the falsehood on you. Don't make it part of you. Be distant from it, but still acknowledge it's there, so that you don't run around going, oh, just letting falsehood just run amok. And certainly don't share it, and don't make it part of yourself.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, and that business about sharing it, and shtika, meaning silence, if you really don't know whether it's true or not, we're not supposed to share it. I was visiting a friend of mine, and I met his mother for the first time, and his mother is like, well, I got this email and it said such and such about this politician. So I didn't know whether it was true or not, but I passed it on because I thought everyone needed to know. I was like, and that was where I decided to stay silent, because this is this guy's mom, and she's, I'm not there to get in a fight with his mom. And I was just like, okay, then. Well, then, thank you. Bonnie.
So now that you said that, because I've gone back and forth whether I wanted to bring this up, California has something called propositions, which is how we make decisions in this crazy state. And we get a booklet that has all the sides of these propositions. And I read them, and quite frankly, many of them I don't understand. So I've made, for me, a decision to go to the League of Women Voters, which to me is a nonpartisan. And I hope at least I will get an understanding, not what's right and what's wrong, but an understanding of these. And I think when you're talking about too much truth or not enough truth, I think many of us are just trying to get an understanding.
Yeah, that is really hard. And there are, these ballot propositions in California. These are hundreds of millions of dollars, people's personal rights. I mean, these are some very big things. So these are not small, these are important issues. All right, well, we are going to dive in on a related issue, or another wrinkle. And there's this quote here from my mom. Can everybody see the truth and flattery slide? Can't see all of you. Is this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And may I have a volunteer to unmute and read?
It is forbidden to accustom oneself to smooth speech and flatteries. Even a single word of flattery or deception is forbidden. A person should always cherish truthful speech, an upright spirit, and a pure heart freed of all pretense and cunning.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, and then I'll cut and paste this into the chat so we can see each other, and then also percolate on this a little bit. So what is Maimonides talking about here? What are some of the points what is the point he's trying to make? Yeah, Carrie.
my first thought was, don't be a narcissist. Because
No.
they, narcissistic personality, if you, that way you crave that flattery and, you know, and all that stuff. And, on the other hand, this thought just popped in my head. What if you're someone who cannot accept flattery?
Hmm. Well, let me ask a question. Is praise the same thing as flattery?
Good question. No, it means two different things, but the effect on a person, I think, is the same.
Hmm. Yeah, so there could be an impact on a person, and I think can be similar, absolutely. And so, Karen, what are your thoughts? Karen, I think you're still on mute.
I wasn't thinking of it from the perspective of a narcissist, but rather from the perspective of myself or anyone else who just is being kind by saying something maybe a bit nicer than they might otherwise. And what happens is the response that you get may not be quite as honest or truthful if the action that you're beginning with is exaggerated kindness, maybe, or otherwise. I'm not saying there's not a place for that. I'm just saying that if without cause I exaggerate a wonderful critique to someone, their response may be based on that. And so they may not have an honest response. And then the entire conversation is not really truthful if we're looking for some type of exact truth.
Yeah, so I think you're bringing out a really important point here, and to extrapolate from you saying maybe flattery has some level of exaggeration or untruth to it. And once you start going down that road, you may not be getting a fully truthful or a genuine response. Did I kind of understand you correctly?
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Wendy.
I think this quote of Maimonides is providing a way to have the strength to distance ourselves from falsehood. So in the last part of it, when it tells you to cherish truthful speech and upright spirit and pure heart, if these things are in you, then that is strengthening you to distance yourself from falsehood. That's the first thing. And then the other thing that you ask about, the difference between flattery and praise, may be motivation in giving it. It could be that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So what might the motivation be for flattery?
Try to get somebody to like you and try to convince them to do something with you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, something like the word that came to mind for me was manipulation.
That's what I mean. Only
Yeah, yeah.
in the kid way.
That's what I hear you describing. And I was just thinking about it, and it's like all of my good friends never only give me praise.
Right.
Sometimes they're going to say things where it's like, dude, you totally blew it. You messed up. And so, and especially like the less well you know someone, if all everyone ever has to say is how great you are. As Carrie pointed out, we're susceptible to that. Who doesn't like to hear that? Unless you're one of these people who I've been like that as well, or it's sort of like, no, it's not, I didn't do anything, don't praise me, but there's a certain manipulative aspect. And so this brings us to our subject for the breakout rooms. So Hillel said that one must always praise the
Oh,
bride as
just looking
beautiful at a
at it.
wedding. And is this the same as flattery? You know, how so or why not?
No,
So
I can't get rid of this.
I'm going to start opening up the breakout rooms. Someone was asking me a question in the chat that I don't understand. Did you want me to paste it into the chat? If I heard they do not persist, but I will put it in the chat so you can copy and paste it. There we go. There is the topic. Okay, now the breakout rooms. All right.
Oh, wait, Craig, before you do that, last time we learned that once you leave us, it's not in the chat, and I'm looking to see where I don't see it in the chat. I don't see it in the chat on my computer. So weird.
Yeah, it's not at the end
It's-
because when is her clock is off, so it's the second to last one.
Second to last one.
Yeah, just go to the bottom and then scroll up some.
It's not in mine.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh, got it. Okay, right. Thank you. Sorry.
no worries.
I'll just put it into notes.
Yeah.
No problem. For those of you that have been streaming, this is where we say goodbye for the day. Thank you so much for being here. Please come by the American Mussar website, americanmussar.com. Join the email list so you can get the Zoom invitation to these meetings. Or if you want to kind of see the very tail end, go to the American Mussar YouTube channel where you can see the recording of this meeting. So thanks for being here. Hey everyone, welcome back. So how were those discussions? What do we think? Is praising the bride the same as flattery, or did you talk about something else interesting? Would anyone care to share?
Yeah, I always.
Yeah, we're always happy to hear from you too. Joanne.
Yeah, so I was mentioning many years ago, I subbed for my friend's mother at my friend's wedding in Israel, and I was saying, God, I think I failed miserably. You know, I didn't tell her how gorgeous she looked or anything, and you know, maybe I was too self-centered back then. I don't know, or just not feeling capable of it. And then we were talking about, I was bringing up woman of valor, you know, how it says, I don't know, that beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears God, she shall be praised. But that's a different thing. That's once you're already married, you know, that your children praise you and your husband for like running a good household and being very industrious and, you know, which I thought was all good, you know, good stuff. But on your wedding day, really, you want to hear that you look beautiful. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Hannah, I know you arrived late and I didn't say hello to you, so just saying hello, don't need to share, but forgot to welcome you when you arrived. So hi, nice to see you. It looks like Paul or Carrie.
I took the whole thing in a different way. My take is that you're not praising the physical beauty of the bride, or it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what the wedding stands for, what the love of the bride for this arrangement, well, hopefully the love anyway. I mean, it's it's a rite of passage, it's a transition, it's everything that a wedding or a marriage means. And that's what you're saying is beautiful. Not so much how the bride looks.
Thank you. We're getting a little bit into speed round here, but I really like that. And what I hear you saying is there's a greater truth that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
About the community, about the moment. Stephanie.
Well, Carrie got there first, but that's kind of what we were discussing. And it wasn't about physical beauty, but more like an internal feeling, honoring someone. That praise was equated to honoring them in that moment of wonderfulness, and that the praise was coming from the heart. And that sometimes flattery could almost feel like you're wanting to get something from that. Flattery, and then expecting a reaction or something that makes you feel better about giving that to a person. But praise was kind of thought about as honoring, and I like that idea.
I love that. Thanks so much for sharing it, Stephanie. And Karen, you will get the last share tonight, but not the last word, because I always get the last word, and that is the truth.
Okay, I don't think that it's flattery to say the bride looks beautiful, because as somebody just mentioned, you're not getting anything for doing that. And beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And so beautiful to one person may not be beautiful to another. And it's so easy to say to a bride that they're just radiating joy, because that isn't inner beauty. And I also don't think that this statement was meant only for people who can see. For instance, people who are blind, they can still have something lovely to say about the bride without being able to include a physical description.
Thank you, Karen. I've never thought of that point about the blind, but I love that. That is great. Yeah, we all have an opportunity and maybe an obligation to contribute to kind of the beauty and the sacredness of the moment, with our words. And that's how I take that. And it's flattery is about something else. Thought you were so beautiful. I got you the greatest gift in the world, because you deserved it. Okay, thank you. Well, with that, let's close our eyes once again and take in a nice leisurely breath and a nice leisurely exhale. Let's focus on what this experience today has meant to us. What community experiences of being with other people mean to us. The truth of our relationships, the important ones, people we most care about. And allow ourselves to be nurtured by those people who care for us.